Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis. I am with one of our regulars, Daniel J. Cohen, president of Indivisible Houston. How are you doing today, Daniel?
I'm doing well. It's day 186 in quarantine, so I've got a little bit of experience at this point. I feel like we're all grizzled veterans of this era.
Yeah, but you know what? It's going to build character. What it's going to tell us is, we were the ones who did what we knew we had to do. And as much as it is a sacrifice, we did it last night. I was going through my Twitter feed, and there's this thing about these young, and what hurts most, it's a bunch of young people running through Target with their take off your mask, and I'm sitting down there and just thinking, my God, I would expect that of the people my age, not your age. You guys actually understand science.
No, it's true. Yeah, they're playing Twisted Sister or something like that on the guy's phone or something, So it's, someone pointed out in Indonesia there was a small group of people who didn't want to take their masks off, and they put them up to hard labor. And it sounds a lot like what the right always says, right? That they compare it to other countries. Well, in other countries they do this. The way that this death cult would be treated in a lot of places if they were under someone who was a little bit more hardline, like Trump treats the very people that he demonizes on a regular basis, would be completely different. And the fact that you juxtapose that with forced hysterectomies and ICE detention centers, that it took a nurse actually blowing the whistle on that, just shows a complete disconnection, a complete lack of awareness and lack of interest in any education related to atrocities that are going on in favor of a privileged, high-end, snooty, yet at the same time uninformed understanding of a historic era in history when we have a global pandemic going on. It's not just that they don't know what's going on, it's that they're being goaded to not understand what's going on by high forces so that people can profit off of it. It's sad.
And it's sad because you just said the magic word. Very few people are profiting off of this. And they continue. It's willful ignorance is a dangerous thing because these are all very smart people. And, it's just like I said, my brothers and sisters on the right, they're smart. Why do they allow themselves to? I have a relative that is graduated first in their class, and they fell for the Kool-Aid. But that is willful.
It is. No, it very much there's not a. That I reference this sometimes when I see this stuff because it reminds me of Ben Carson, right? You get this guy who's he's a neurosurgeon, but some of the stuff he says is completely detached from the world and the way things work. And you get the similar there years ago. I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan like me, Egberto,
yes,
but
I used to watch it.
There's this scene years ago where George and Kramer are outside talking, and they're pointing out this guy has double parked them in, and he says, that guy could be a rocket scientist. He could have landed a man on the moon, but he's bad at parking. He's smart with rockets, but dumb with parking. I feel like I see people all the time that are smart with rockets and dumb with parking. It's and COVID just really brings it out of people that they can think through complex financial algorithms, but they think that a virus is fake and the epidemiologists are lying. It's very strange.
It is amazing. But, last night we had a little chat, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you because, I always like to hear your insights on things. And I was telling you, we are going to have to really start giving, I don't know if the thing is giving some leeway to more progressives is the answer, because a lot of times we come across very tight or very pure, very altruistic in the things that we're doing. And, we know that Walmart is doing a bad thing. So we're telling people don't go to shop at Walmart. And you had some stories as well to tell. So, I wanted to kind of explore a little bit more on that, why it is that, I know what a lot of us believe, but why I don't think we need to hold people to this tenet that, well, if you are shopping at Walmart, or if you're shopping if you're going to Chick-fil-A, that somehow you're no longer progressive. You're doing all the wrong things because you're supporting these bad people. Why don't you kind of elaborate on that for me?
Well, I think individual choices are fine. I think a lot of times they are somewhat cosmetic, and I do think that we fail to go the deeper level when it comes to them. And we kicked it around. I mean, it's going to take structural change. It's going to take
Right.
systemic change and policy change. It's not going to come from one person doing something individually. With you look at like the Chick-fil-A example is a good example, right? Where you have
I love
this.
that one. I hadn't known that. Explain that to the people because that's a solid one actually.
Well, I think right. So, like most people, a lot of people on the left know that like Chick-fil-A's CEO and Chick-fil-A's leadership has beliefs that are anti-choice and anti-gay, and so as a way of showing solidarity for those causes, they stay away from Chick-fil-A. Speaking of which, I think that that's fine. I think like if as long as you leverage it right, like it's fine to do that kind of thing. I do think though that it's kind of funny when you put it alongside the premise that a lot of people have that there's no ethical consumption under capitalism in the first place, that now you're taking a specific ethical consumption stand. And then in terms of Chick-fil-A specifically, you're looking directly at competitors. If you say, for example, don't buy any fast food chicken, well, you have a little bit firmer ground. But if you say buy Popeyes instead of Chick-fil-A, then you run into another problem because now you're patronizing a business that pays its workers $3 or $4 less so that you can take a stance on another issue that's a progressive issue like choice or LGBTQ rights, and things. So it gets very difficult to sort of start threading these commercial needles. I think if you want to take action and economic action, I think that there is a lot of room for economic activism. And I do think there are some things that are like a very clear line, right, where you can stand up against like private prisons. Okay,
Hmm.
that's a real, or like products that come from private prisons, stuff like that. You can start drawing those lines. My company's moved away from oil and gas. We just decided we're not going to service that. Our ability to communicate is not going to be used for that. We don't expect that it's going to hurt the oil and gas industry, but we took just a clear stand just for the purpose of taking a clear stand. And I think that that's fine if people want to make individual choices, but I think we could think a little bit deeper about it. And I think that we also could take other more powerful actions. And I think also acknowledging those other more powerful actions need to be taken is important too. Sometimes it even can unintentionally prop up cosmetic progress, which, as you and I know, cosmetic progress always replaces real progress. So
Right.
if you're applauding a large corporation because it says we're not going to allow people to open carry in our stores, or we've put a rainbow flag on top of our store or something like that, but they're still underpaying their workers, then you or like, hey, look, we wrote Black Lives Matter in the end zone, or something like that. Like it kind of misses the bigger picture too. And so I think it is important to be really careful when it comes to putting all of this weight on individual choice in our activism as opposed to pushing for systemic policy changes.
And I think that is so right. I want to kind of elaborate a little bit on the Chick-fil-A Popeyes difference because I think that is so important. Because we go ahead and let's say we even have a successful boycott of Chick-fil-A, and those people who would have bought those chicken sandwiches at Chick-fil-A go buy it at Popeyes. In effect, what we're saying is because Chick-fil-A doesn't do something morally that we like, we are actually reducing the amount of income within that community, that poor community, because Chick-fil-A pays its people $3 to $4 more per hour, which is probably 50-60% more than Popeyes. And which is which, Popeye, that person doesn't get to. So I mean, the other thing is I use as well is my wife goes and she shops at Walmart to get certain things, and there's a time I was like, we shouldn't be supporting Walmart, etc. And I noticed one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
As an activist, both of us are activists as well. In fact, I think most of us spend more of our time doing in the activist world.
Right.
I have to minimize costs because of the activist model, right? So if I am going to, let's say, shop at Kroger's for something that costs a lot less at Walmart, it means I have to raise that much more from, and then, so you get into this moral dilemma. And so I started to say, we have to fight for exactly what we fight for, which is systemic change. We can't ask the individual because you put yourself at a disadvantage. Let's give another example. The right-wing opponent that does what we do, that have the right-wing radio show, the right-wing blogger, the right-wing, he can go ahead and shop at Walmart because that's what he believes in. He can go ahead and do all the things that, that makes things less expensive for him. And in doing so, make him a more effective communicator because he has more resources left back to communicate. I gave
No,
you go ahead.
No, I mean they definitely have a structural advantage because of the shape of the corporatist system that we have set up. I was running a number, by the way, that when I looked down there on my phone, what I was doing was, $7.25 an hour versus $10 an hour. I mean, you're looking at like $5,000 over the course of a year for somebody. And if you're someone who's in that bracket, I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, that's
exactly.
for a lot of people, that's all rent, or, that can be all groceries and gas or something like that. I mean, it's basic sort of needs to live. I think if people want to look at economic impact, the thing that we should really be encouraging, if people are really interested in that, is organization of workplaces.
Yes.
It's it's organized protest of given locations, right? Like you see with the baby jail and 419 Emancipation here in Houston,
right,
and other places like that, or outside of Core Civic and Core Civic and Geo group sort of detention centers and things like that. It's what Bernie Sanders did when he went and spoke at the shareholders meeting for Amazon, and some of the revolution theologist priests where they do that at the big banks and other giant corporations out in the Northeast. I think that like buying one share of stock and going and burning the shareholders meeting to the ground is great activism.
Yes.
Like there's a lot we can do in terms of economic impact. And I do think, even individual action, like I said, it's great. The most radical thing you can do in this day and age is grow your own food.
Yes.
I think that's like setting up community gardens, setting up exchanges, coming up with craft fairs that are like local driven and things like that. And like, definitely like holding your purse on a given day, like not purchasing things, and general strikes and all that stuff. Definitely the economy like is ripe for disruptive activism that can change things so that people get more of the money, and these extremely wealthy, deep-pocketed people who have just been hoarding all of the cash this whole time, and all of their enablers in the government, like Trump and Greg Abbott here in Texas, and Dan Patrick, who's the actual governor and bullies the governor around here, and all those guys, like we can definitely change the calculus on them.
Right.
When we haven't seen a lot of that in the United States as of recently. I think that we're gonna see more of it if things continue to go along this way, because it's not like it's entirely new. Well, you'll see 1,000 or 2,000 workers throw down their apron at the same time. But I think that we do have to bridge the gap, and it can hurt us if we're trying to organize surrounding economics and we go in on an individual choice level, because I don't think that it's the most accessible way for us to talk to somebody in the first place. That you're going to tell someone in a small town not to buy baby formula from the only store that's within 30 miles of that town to begin
Right.
with. They got somebody's got a car that's beat up. They got 2-3 jobs, and they're already like going back and forth, or maybe they're taking a bus back and forth, like the woman in Roger and Me, like the Flint, the woman who lives in Flint, Michigan,
Yeah.
who's taking a bus all the time. I mean, going to a local store for a town that's nearby, it's not even their town, right, or something like that, is just off the table. The economic system has made it so that it's impossible for these folks to do that. So if you want to evangelize to people and talk to people about what's going on in the system, if you lead with that, then you're going to run into trouble. Whereas if you lead with, hey, what's going on at your workplace? What do you need actually right now? Here's a community garden. Maybe this is a way that, in very limited free time, it's down the street from you. Here are some things that we can do to make things better. Not only does it make it better for you, make things more affordable for you, and create stronger community, but it's also taking action on the environment as a whole. And so, you're helping your siblings out in California, you're helping your siblings out in Oregon, and they're going through similar pains, and we're all kind of one people, and we can make the world better. I think that's a much stronger pitch for people who are unfortunately on the wrong end of an economic system that has punished them just for being born, than to tell them, where they should get their chicken. You know, I think I just think it's a lot more powerful to go at it that way.
And it's not only more powerful, it's also a lot more respectful, right? I mean, to put it bluntly, it's a lot more respectful. I think that is so important because, and I think that is where many times, Daniel, progressives sometimes are a bit rigid when it comes to certain issues. Like, and I think that's why I enjoy talking to you, that you can actually paint the picture on the wall and then say, how can I make that picture better? Or how can I make someone who doesn't know how to read that picture, or read that art? You know, what am I saying? Picture, read that art. Yesterday, I did the show, and there's an article out of Common Dreams that followed a new report that came out that says, the title of the article was $2.5 trillion theft. Study shows richest 1% of Americans have taken 50 trillion from bottom 90% in recent decades. And in 1 year, we're talking about $50 billion that if you go ahead and you calculate that people have created better productivity, they have done all these things, that somehow none of that went back. I think a lot of those issues lay right here, that we can't find the appropriate narrative to go out there and tell people, you don't have to stand for this. After all, it is you who do the work. You who are, I mean, those guys at the top, and I know it's sort of cliche and repetitious, but when you see it in big numbers, you really understand what's going on. Your thoughts?
I think when you see it in big numbers, it shows you something. I think when you see it on a day-to-day, it shows you something too. Not in that individual choice sense, but in terms of the individual story that gets told, right? That we can, so you kind of need both, right? You need to explain to people that there's millions of people who can't get access to healthcare coverage for no reason other than the fact that somebody wants to buy another golden yacht, right? But you also have to kind of talk to people about what's going on in their individual life and say, how's your insurance company treating you? And that starts to really show a picture too. Some of this stuff will come to a head. I mean, people are going to have conversations about it. I don't know what the future holds. I know that we have to continue to organize and talk about it, but I don't know exactly what the future will hold, because there have been giant empires that have gotten away with stuff like this for a really, really long time. And sometimes the only thing that causes them to fall apart is another empire.
Right.
And so we don't, there's no guarantee at the end of the day. I mean, I don't mean this to be an uplifting thought, because it's not, but there's no guarantee, right, that we'll kind of get over on the other side of it. But I do have hope that people will continue to organize. I am seeing some really good organizers that are starting to have these conversations. I see that it seems to have flagged a little bit, but the concept of UBI, at least over the course of the year, has enjoyed more popularity than it's ever enjoyed in the history of politics. I mean, it wasn't even an idea that was on the table until the last few years, and now it's on the table in mainstream political dialogues a little bit more. And I think that there's an opportunity for broad coalitions to be able to support some of these ideas. So, we'll see. I mean, we're about to hit we've already been through a chaotic period. It's going to continue for a little bit here, and it might even spike, in the next, we might even see like a spike very soon when it comes to some of that. But the other side of chaos is that I do think that it shows a lot of people how things actually work. And, when someone says like jobs, and all of a sudden your town is like isolated because of political turmoil, artificially created by wealthy people, I think that we might see some change based on that.
I mean, it is so important. Now you talk about, we don't know what it looks like on the other side. We don't know what it looks like on the other side a lot of times because we have to be formative. We have to be the ones that make what it looks like on the other side. And that's what I try to tell people. If we are effective enough, we will. Now, that is where coming into something like this pandemic, I did another show a few weeks ago that said the depression will not be televised. Right now, the truth of the matter is that we are in a depression. If you take a look at the numbers and compare them to 1929, there are a lot of these numbers that are worse. Now, one of the things that we don't have is we don't have the soup lines. We have antiseptic food lines where people line up in these big parking lots at these big stadiums to collect food. I mean, which, in 29, you saw these long soup lines, which maybe are more effective visually. When you see these big lines of cars with nicely packed food, it almost looks like a sports event. So it doesn't have the gravity that you see with somebody going through a soup line. So I mean, there's a whole lot that I think we have to start to put out, because I mean, I don't know if people realize this. What people are doing is, by having all these things seem so antiseptic, you don't have to make structural change. There's enough food in the country. There's enough to give away food in the country. So it's not hurting the corporations to do what they're doing. What really hurts them is increasing the people's salary, reducing the work week, and all these things that we really need to do as productivity increases, so that we have a more equitable distribution of resources. But we don't do that because it's easier to keep the structure and have what I call, what we have is antiseptic slavery, right? Those of us who are still working, or exploited as best they can to keep a whole lot of other people unemployed, because we can service them with food. We're not going to give them money because that's going to be a bit, but we'll give them just whatever it takes to sustain them. Those are the things we have, I think, to put in a manner that everybody can see themselves as a possibility of being there.
You're definitely right. It's like, it's the same thing when you're in traffic in a car, right? And you get really mad at another car. It doesn't dawn on you as a person in there, right? So definitely the visual of a long car, it's going to, a long car line is going to evoke less empathy than a long bread line or something like that. Some of the other things that are coming to a head, though, right, is people are getting evicted, and you're starting to see that national papers are covering Houston and other places, right, where people are getting tossed out of their housing. And some of these folks, there's a guy named Gary Gates who won a special election for the state legislature here. He's the opponent of Lee Markowitz, and in the Chronicle, they covered that he is a slumlord. He's
100 evictions.
100 evictions, right, over the course of the pandemic. And his response is basically that it was perfectly legal. And that's a problem, Gary. You guys have legalized robbing people of what little possessions they have, and you've legalized giving it to people who have a lot more money, like you. And not only do you have the money, but you also sit in the legislature, so that when that legislative session comes up, you can help all your donor class buddies get away with all of it, right? And so we've got that going on. We've got the COVID healthcare crisis going on, where people are that's another way that people who have less money in their pocket are getting punished, just for not having money. We've got the cash bail system. It's a huge fight. Some guy sends me an email. I got in a fight. I mean, and since I can curse on your show, right? So I can we don't have to worry about the 7 dirty words. But this guy sends me an email that says, murder victim killed by a guy who's out on his 6th bond, and it has a little thumbs down. Right? I don't know how I wound up on this guy's list, but I'm going to tell you, Egberto, the exact thing that I sent back to him was, take me off your list, you Willie Horton ad running wannabe motherfucker. That was that's what I sent him.
You were mad.
I was really, really mad, and I got it. Anyway, I won't go into a ton of it. I got an email back from them, and finally I was like, I don't consent to you contacting me, stop it, basically, right? But I mean, that I think that there was a disconnect, right? Because what I got back was something like, well, maybe you'll be nicer next time just because we disagree on politics. It's very basic. If you send me something demonizing people based on money, based on race, I'm going to send you something nasty. This is not a political disagreement. That is a basic disagreement over how people should be treated, or how people should be respected or disrespected. I put it on par with if I said something nasty about your mom or something like that, except everyone's mom, right? I mean, it's it's the utmost sort of disrespect. Point is, I think that maybe the Depression won't be televised, and maybe these food lines that are executed via vehicle as opposed to on foot are not going to carry the same visual, but some of the stuff looks the same. And when people wind up out on their stoop with all their stuff, especially in an environment where you're supposed to be wearing a mask and you're not supposed to be without housing, and that without
where they want you locked into your home.
I mean, things are extra dangerous. And then what, are you supposed to find one of the limited jobs now, and then you go in, and then what, you live on the street in the middle of COVID? I mean, it's, they are doing things that are going to affect people who right? And so the only question then is, who is going to be blamed for that? And they're going to spin it to try to blame, I don't know, some some fake cabal of billionaires that like eat children or something,
or
apparently.
not, or even the people themselves for not having a job, or
Right.
yeah, or the other thing that well, in the case of the right, what they want to do is they want to make it seem they want to first convince you that, let's say, this COVID thing is nothing more than a cold or something, and you are lazy for wanting to stay home. You're using the mask as an excuse. They're setting up a whole lot of narratives in the event that Trump wins, that they can get this economy going again at all costs, meaning your life. I mean, these are such important concepts. Now, I think what I try to do, and what I'm hoping others do, is that no other European country that has some sort of a good social safety net either comes close to the unemployment that we're having, comes close to the level of poverty, or even have something called evictions that are going on in these times. And most Americans talk about us being the best. We are the best. We are the bastion of the world, with all these things that are occurring, when the people we want to that are should be looking up to us are doing things so much better. It is something that I think the only reason it plays is that most Americans are unaware. They're working so hard, they're so now under stress, that they don't know these things. And if we can get that message out, if we can talk to people and say things can really be better, it can be. I think we can make a difference. We're coming to the end of our time, Senor Daniel. Why don't you give me a one of your standard inspirational statements?
Look, if you want to figure out how you can get involved in what's going on in the Houston area, you can go to indivisiblehouston.org. We also accept, of course, if you want to fund what's going on in the Houston area, no donation is too large or too small. And so if you're in another area and you want to make an impact here in the capital of oil and gas, where we're constantly fighting an uphill battle and swinging for Goliath's shin, that's your opportunity to do it. I also want to say that forced sterilization is a form of genocide, and what we saw from ICE is nothing short of that. Abolish ICE, abolish CBP, and defund these folks until they get their stuff together into a system that recognizes people's humanity. If you're not calling your representatives and demanding that of them, and I'm not just talking about Congress, but at the state, at the municipal level, at the county level, ask your local dog catcher down the street what they think about ICE abolition. Now is the time to do it. We know that there are bills in Congress from Representatives Jayapal and Mark Pocan. We know that representatives such as Sylvia Garcia and Al Green here in Houston, and other representatives around the United States, have already called for those bills. And if you're not putting this stuff on your radar, if you're not holding them accountable for following through on this right now, then that's a huge fight that needs to be fought, and they need your voice on the table. So I know that you have a big progressive audience, Egberto. I hope that people take the time to talk to the representatives about ICE abolition. I can't stress that enough. I know that wasn't really what we talked about today, but again, forced sterilization is a form of genocide, period. And we're seeing that in private detention centers that service ICE. And a nurse, a woman stuck her neck out to make sure that the rest of us know that. And we need to honor that. We need to respect that. We need to respect the people who are mistreated and abused but in our name, and say that we're not going to allow it and we're not going to stand for it. So again, you want to get in touch with me, it's indivisiblehouston.org. Abolish ICE. It's lovely to see you, Egberto. I appreciate you, man.
Man, let me tell you, thank you very much, Daniel, for having been here on Politics Done Right. Folks, so please do remember, visit indivisiblehouston.org, and please contribute there as well. There are a lot of organizations that are really trying to make that difference that we need to make. indivisiblehouston.org. And Daniel J. Cohen, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.
I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel, and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.